Light a candle. Pull the blanket close. Let the stars listen too. The forest that remembered. Once upon a time, in a kingdom where trees whispered names, a girl named Alira was born without a shadow. No matter how bright the sun or how many moons passed, she cast no shape behind her. The villagers feared her, believing shadows were souls made visible. Alira grew in silence. Her only joy the ancient forest at the edge of the kingdom, a place no one else dared enter. But in the forest, the trees called her name. One day, the bark of the oldest oak split open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into glowing roots. Alira descended and met a being woven from light and memory, the grove keeper who told her a truth hidden since her birth. Her shadow had been taken as payment for her father's life, a bargain struck with the forest long ago. But now the forest was dying, its memory fading, and it needed a guardian, someone unburdened by the weight of a shadow. Alira agreed. From that day forward, she wandered the forest in silence, her footsteps leaving no prints, her presence felt only in the soft rustle of leaves. And though no one saw her again, the kingdom noticed the trees began to sing once more, as if remembering something precious that had been nearly lost. Years passed, though time inside the forest did not flow like it did in the outside world. Alira had become more myth than memory, a name whispered by wandering children and old women who still believed the trees could feel. Within the forest, however, she had become something else entirely. Her voice, once quiet and afraid, now echoed through the roots and branches. She could calm storms with a touch of bark, summon the memory of blooming flowers with a thought. But even magic comes with questions. One twilight, the grove keeper returned not as light and memory this time, but in the shape of a deer with antlers made of stars. It spoke in a language made of silence and song, warning Alira that something ancient had awakened in the hollow path, a forgotten trail, buried deep beneath the mossy bones of the forest, where no roots dared grow and no birds sang. Something that remembers too much, the grove keeper said, eyes dim with worry, and remembers wrong. Alira had never been to the hollow path. It was the part of the forest even she feared, a place untouched even by the magic that flowed through her veins. But she knew she had to go. She was the forest now, and it was hurting. As she walked, the trees grew more twisted, their trunks blackened as if burned from the inside. Whispers followed heron like the names the trees once spoke. These were bitter, broken things. Regrets, accusations, pieces of forgotten nightmares. Then she saw it. A shadow. Her shadow. It stood tall and full in the moonlight, attached to nothing, yet moving on its own. It smiled without a face and said, "You left me behind. You let me rot. And now, I remember everything you've forgotten." Alira trembled, not out of fear, but recognition. The shadow was not evil, it was wounded. It carried the pain she had never dared face, the fear of being unloved, the weight of never belonging, the guilt of a father's sacrifice. It had grown bitter in the hollow path, fed by silence and abandonment. She stepped toward it, and instead of running or banishing it, she whispered, "I'm sorry." The forest held its breath. Alira reached out and embraced her shadow, and in that moment, she felt its ache as if it were her own. The shadow shivered and began to dissolve, not into darkness, but into starlight. It flowed into her like water returning to the riverbed. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. The hollow path softened, the roots returned, and the trees began to whisper not just names but stories. The forest had learned something that day, that remembering pain was as important as remembering beauty. And Alira had learned that courage wasn't just in sacrifice, it was in forgiveness, even of the parts of ourselves we fear. Back in the kingdom, saplings bloomed where once there had been dust. Children spoke of a new tree in the heart of the forest hall, silver-barked, with leaves that shimmered like glass. Some swore it bore a lyra's shape, arms outstretched to the sky, with a S. The forest, now healed from its deepest wound, began to flourish. But with new growth came an old hunger. Strange wiltings appeared, leaves that turned to ash without fire, roots that cracked like bone, birds that forgot how to sing. The grove keeper, now fading and flickering like a candle, confessed, "The forest remembers what it wants, but something else is beginning to remember us." Illyra learned of the border of names, the final edge of the forest, where the names of every living thing are carved into the ground. No one had ever walked there and returned. It was said that the moment you saw your own name written in soil, your story would begin to unravel, word by word. With a cloak stitched from night petals, and the memory of her shadow now her strength, Illyra began the journey. As she walked, the trees grew thin and uncertain. Time-warped sunrise flickered like a broken lantern. She saw ghosts of herself, a child laughing, a teenager crying, a woman she had not yet become, all whispering warnings. Finally, she reached the border. It was not a wall, but a river of earth and ink. Every step revealed names, some glowing gold, some cracked and erased. Her own name was not yet visible. That's when the wind spoke in a forgotten tongue, and a creature rose from the soil. It had no face, only a mirror for a mouth. "You are the story that forgot to end," it said. "You are here to be edited." The creature lunged, but Illyra didn't run. Instead, she held up her memory, the shadow she had forgiven, the songs of the trees, the pain she had carried. "I am not finished," she whispered, "but I am not afraid to be written." The border shook. The creature cracked like old glass and scattered into mist. But the ground had changed. Her name now glowed, and beside it, another name pulsed, Aralune, the name of the forest itself. The connection was deeper than she knew. The forest was no longer wilting, but neither was it at peace. Now that Illyra had seen the truth, it stirred with longing, heavy with stories that had never been told. The birds sang in broken notes. The trees shivered under secrets they could no longer bear alone. The grove keeper had vanished. The forest had no voice left, except hers. Illyra stood beneath the silver tree, the one that had grown from Aralune's resting place, and placed her hands upon its bark. It was smooth as glass, cold as memory. Within it, she felt the weight of generations. Pain unsaid, love unspoken, promises made in silence. The forest was not dying, it was choking on everything it had ever remembered. There was one path left, carved not by roots, but by song. Illyra returned to the heart of the forest, where all paths met beneath a massive hollow root. There, the ground pulsed like a heartbeat. She knelt and whispered, "I give my voice to the forest, not to guide it, not to guard it, but to let it speak for itself." She opened her mouth and sung no with words, but with everything she had ever felt: loneliness, awe, grief, wonder, forgiveness. As her voice rose, her body began to dissolve into light, into leaves, into the scent of rain on old wood. She was becoming the breath between branches, the hush before a name is spoken. One final note lingered, soft and shimmering, then faded into the wind. And then the forest spoke. For the first time in centuries, the forest told its story not through rustling branches or dreams, but with a clear voice that echoed through the roots of the earth and into the ears of every living thing. People in the kingdom heard it in their sleep and woke with tears. Trees began growing in places where there were none before. Forgotten flowers bloomed beside graves. Lost children followed the sound and found their way home. No one saw Lyra again, but wherever the forest grew, so did her song. And at the edge of the silver tree, where the roots hummed like wind chimes, a single line was carved not by hand, but by memory. She listened. So now we speak. And now, the river sings. A new story begins. In the quiet hour, when the stars lean closer and the world softens into breath and shadow, listen, there it is again. A bell beneath the water. A city beneath the bell. This is the story of the city beneath the river. Beneath a river that no map dares mark, past water that forgets to flow, there sleeps a city made of glass. No one remembers how it sank, only that sometimes when the moon is missing from the sky, you can hear its bells ringing under the current. This is not the story of its fall, but of the girl who dared to knock on its door. There was a girl named Mirelle who was born with water in her ears. Not water like rain or sea, but water that sang. When she was a child, she would press her head to puddles and hum along to the tune only she could hear. The villagers thought her strange, touched by old river spirits, and kept their distance. Mirelle didn't mind. She had her melodies and the silent companionship of the riverbank, where the reeds danced in time with her humming. One night, during a moonless sleep, Mirelle heard something different. Not the usual ripple song, but a deep, mournful bellow and distant, like it had been ringing for centuries beneath her feet. She followed the sound to the water's edge, barefoot and trembling, and there in the still surface, she saw buildings, glass towers and bridges, flickering like lanterns beneath the river itself. She stepped forward, and the water pulled her under. But she didn't drown. Instead, she found herself walking dry among ruins that shone like crystal. Above her, the river flowed upside down like a mirror ceiling. And there, at the center of the sunken square, stood a locked door carved from pearl and coral, humming the same tune she had always known. On the door were these words: "Only those who hear us may help us be heard." Mirelle reached for the handle and the city stirred. When Mirelle opened the pearl door, a great hush fell over the glass city. The humming in her ears stopped, replaced by a stillness so complete it ached. Before her stretched a long corridor, lined with statues made not of stone, but frozen wait-reach, one a person with their mouth open mid-song, as if caught in the moment of a final note. She walked among them, heart pounding. Though they could not move, she could hear their silence pressing in on her like deep ocean weight. At the end of the hall stood a platform surrounded by flickering lanterns, and above it, a mosaic dome shimmered like fish scales. A figure stood waiting there, a tall woman with skin like melted glass and eyes full of storms. "I am the Echo, Regent," the woman said, her voice soft as wind beneath waves. "And you have heard what no one else could." Mirelle asked where she was, what this place had been, and why no one remembered it. The regent's answer came slowly, as if drawn from ancient depths. "This city was once a choir," she said. "We did not speak with words, but with harmony. Every soul had a note, and together we sang the world awake. But then the dissonance came a noise that could not be unmade. It shattered our songs, and with it, ourselves. So we sang one final note to seal the city, and ourselves, in silence. She stepped down and took Mirel's hand. You were born with a fragment of our last song in your blood. You are the first outsider who has ever heard us, which means the silence is beginning to crack. We need your help, but once you begin, you cannot go back. Sound will follow you, and so will the dissonance. Mirel looked around at the frozen singers. Their eyes were open, watching, waiting. She nodded. I've heard you all my life. I'm ready to answer. The lanterns flared. The silence, once perfect, now carried the soft tremble of a girl's voice and the echo of something older, stirring in the deep. After Mirel accepted the Echo Regent's request, the frozen choir began to shift. One by one, the water statues shimmered and cracked, voices trapped in silence breaking free in soft sighs and scattered notes. Not full songs, but fragments. A lullaby, a chime, a single sorrowful hum. The city was remembering how to sing. But with each voice that returned, so too did a shadow. It came first as a pulse felt more than seen. A sour vibration beneath her feet, like a wrong note played too long. Mirel staggered as the glass city trembled. From the far edge of the dome, a crack formed in the mirrored river ceiling. Water didn't fall through. Instead, darkness did. The Echo Regent turned pale. The dissonance has woken. She explained that it was never a creature or curse, but a forgetting, a noise born when harmony is broken and meaning is lost. The dissonance fed on abandoned songs, orphaned memories, and silence chosen out of fear. When the city fell, they sealed it away with their final chord, hoping it would sleep forever. But Mirel's awakening voice had stirred it. Now it hunted her. You must go deeper, said the regent, pressing a key of coral into Mirel's palm. To the heart-glass vault, where the songroots lie. Only there can you learn the true note sound that made the city and might still save it. Mirel passed through coral gates and entered tunnels of light and shadow, where ancient instruments wept and echoed with their own loneliness. Whispers followed her, not words, but discord, notes that tried to reshape her melody, twist her courage, rewrite her song into silence, but she hummed louder. A tune only she remembered, from childhood puddles and moonless nights. Her voice cut through the noise, and as she sang, the dissonance recoiled. Just for a moment. Mirel ran on, deeper into the forgotten belly of the river, with a single truth echoing behind her. The only thing that breaks silence is a voice brave enough to rise inside it. Mirel followed the coral key through an archway of shattered harps, where light bent sideways and time seemed to fold. Beyond it lay the heart-glass vault, buried beneath layers of memory turned to stone. It was not a place, but a feeling, a chamber built from emotion, shaped by the songs of the city's founders. At its center stood a tree made of translucent crystal, its roots sunk into forgotten lullabies. Hanging from every branch were spheres of glass, each containing a different voice, thousands of them. The tree pulsed faintly with sound, and Mirel felt it. Grief, joy, fury, longing. Every note the city had ever sung was stored here. Then the dissonance arrived. It did not walk or speak. It was a crawling silence, a smothering presence. The lanterns dimmed, the spheres flickered. A horrible unmusic filled the vault, a noise like cracked bells and unfinished thoughts. Mirelle dropped to her knees. The dissonance was not just attacking the vault, it was trying to unwrite her. Her memories, her voice, her name. One by one, they began to fade. But then she remembered the first time she heard the river's hum as a child. The soft vibration in her chest. The way it made her feel seen, even when no one else noticed her. That memory sparked a note, small, trembling but hers. She sang. Her voice resonated through the vault, lighting up the spheres like stars. The dissonance screamed not in anger, but in fear. Mirelle's song wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It didn't need to be polished or loud. It only needed to be true. The heart-glass tree responded. One of its branches bent low and dropped a sphere into her hands. Inside it shimmered the first note, the sound that had once breathed life into the city. It wasn't just music. It was the promise of connection, the thread that tied one soul to another. Mirelle stood, voice shaking but steady. She had the first note now, but using it would mean changing everything. The echo regent's voice reached her from far above. The city will awaken if you sing it, but it will never sleep again. Mirelle closed her eyes and whispered, "Let it wake." And the heart-glass tree began to sing with her. When Mirelle emerged from the heart-glass vault, the city had changed. The river above was rippling like a mirror, trying to remember its reflection. The lanterns that once flickered timidly now burned with steady fire. Statues were melting into people still quiet, still afraid, but no longer frozen. And at the city center, where the pearl door had once stood closed, the dissonance now gathered. It had taken form, not beast or shadow, but a shifting absence in the shape of a person, a figure made of undone songs and unspoken words, walking slowly through the city, silencing everything it passed. Wherever it stepped, buildings cracked, melodies broke apart, memories unraveled into nothing. It turned toward Mirelle, and she saw its face her own, not as she was, but as she might have been, silent, forgotten, invisible. The echo regent appeared beside her, weakened, her glass skin dimming. The dissonance was born of our silence, she said. But it grew through yours too. All the times you weren't heard, all the songs you swallowed. It is your shadow now. Mirelle felt hollow. How can I fight something that came from me? You don't, said the regent. You finish what you never said. So Mirelle climbed the shattered spire where the city's bell had once hung. Nothing remained of it but wind and memory. She stood where the bell once rang and raised the sphere containing the first note. The dissonance screamed, shattering windows, breaking chords in the sky. And Mirelle sang. Not perfectly, not loudly, but completely. She sang of childhood puddles and lonely dinners, of being strange and soft in a world that wanted sharpness, of a river that hummed when no one else listened. She sang for herself, and for everyone who had ever been made small by silence. The first note rose from the sphere and wrapped around her voice like gold thread. The dissonance staggered, then cracked, then vanished, dispersed not by battle, but by the return of something true. Below, the people of the glass city opened their mouths and sang back. No harmony. Not yet. But not silence either. The city did not rise. It stayed beneath the river, glowing softly, breathing again but changed. Not a prison of silence, nor a museum of glass, but a living memory. The people there, those who had once been statues, began to sing again, rebuilding their world with notes rather than bricks, truth instead of stone. Mirelle stayed for a time, walking paths lit by underwater moonlight, learning the old harmonies and teaching new ones of her own. The echo regent, now fading like the end of a long song, gave her one final gift, a fragment of the first note, sealed inside a thread of riverlight. "Take this," she said, "and return to the world above. Let them know we are not gone. Let them remember that even silence has a story." So Morel climbed back up through the Mirror River, past the dome of fish-scale glass and the path of frozen hops, until she emerged once more on the surface. The world felt smaller, brighter. The puddles no longer hummed, but she knew their song by heart now. She carried it in her breath. At first, no one believed her. A city beneath the river? Bells that sing? Shadows made of silence? But she didn't argue. She simply sang, softly, on bridges and porches, in fields, and at festivals. People began to listen, then hum, then remember. And on certain nights, when the moon forgets to rise, if you stand by the river and hold your breath, you can still hear it, the faint toll of a bell with no tower, and a girl's voice, answering it not to command or control, but to remember. Now begins the third story. The Clockmakers' Paradox. There once was a town that feared the wind, not because it howled or shattered trees, but because the wind sometimes brought voices from people long gone, whispering truths never meant to be heard. At the edge of this town stood a tall, crooked tower, filled with clocks that did not tick, and in that tower lived a boy who was born too late, and a girl who refused to forget him. In the town of Welvenmere, every person's life was measured by their first clocka gift given at birth, tied to the beat of their heart. But when a boy named Ivan was born, the town bell cracked. His clock wouldn't start, no matter how finely tuned. People called him cursed, a delay in time's perfect rhythm. His mother swore he would catch up, but the town just waited for him to vanish, as forgotten things often do. He didn't. Instead, he grew slowly, too slowly. When he was 15, he still looked 8. When he was 20, barely 13. But his mind was quick, curious, and strange. He moved into the old clock tower and began building timepieces. No one asked for clocks that ticked backwards, sundials for moonlight, sandglasses that filled instead of emptied. And then one night, he built a clock that whispered. Elsewhere in Welvenmere, a girl named Corinne lived without a single memory of her 7th birthday. Her parents avoided the subject. Her childhood journal skipped from 6 to 8. But she remembered a song, a name, Ivan. She hadn't seen him in years. Everyone said he moved away or never existed, but she heard the wind say otherwise. On a quiet night, as she walked past the old tower, the wind carried a voice that said, "Find the missing hour. I'm still here." Corinne pushed open the tower's rusted door. Dust greeted her, and so did dozens of ticking clocks, none showing the same time. One chimed 13, one struck 0. Another was silent but warm to the touch. At the top of the tower, she found a note on a desk, Time doesn't forget us. It just files us away. I'm in the folds. Come find me. Corinne began visiting the tower in secret. Each visit, the clocks moved a little more. A whisper here, a shadow flicker there. Then, she found a pocket watch unlike the others. It ticked in her hand, but not when she placed it down. When she held it to her ear, she didn't hear ticking, she heard dreams. One dream showed her as a child, laughing with a boy she didn't remember. Another showed Ivan in the tower, building strange devices while the townspeople marched away, never looking back. And then, a final dream. Ivan stepping into a doorway made of starlight, holding the pocket watch. As he vanished, he whispered, "Set the watch to the hour they stole, and I'll come back." Corin now had a goal. Find the stolen hour. But time would not give it freely. Corin followed strange trails in the tower maps written in shifting numbers, paintings that aged backwards, and whispers that led to a locked vault beneath the floor. Inside, she found the hour thieves' creatures made of unraveling threads, faces blurred by forgotten minutes. They were not evil, just hungry. They fed on lost time, skipped heartbeats, unfinished conversations, birthdays forgotten. One thief approached Corin and showed her a memory she'd never seen. Ivan giving her a golden coin on her 7th birthday. The coin bore a symbol the same as the one etched into the pocket watch. The thief spoke, in a voice like broken bells. You traded 1 hour for 1 wish. To remember him always. But they took the hour anyway. Corin, heart aching, made a vow. I want it back. All of it. The thief nodded. Then find the first clock. Only it can restart what they broke. Corin journeyed beyond Welvenmere's borders to the mountain of forgotten hours. There, in a ruined monastery filled with melted bells and frozen candles, she found the first clock enormous, carved into the stone wall, its hands unmoving. It did not tick. It breathed. Around its base were names, millions of them, some glowing faintly, some dim, and there, near the bottom, pulsing like a heartbeat, was one, Ivan Kalor. Corin placed the pocket watch in a slot beneath his name. The first clock shuddered. A voice spoke not from the mountain, but from inside her memory. You remember. That's enough. And the clock began to tick. Time in Welvenmere unraveled. The sky shifted. People paused mid-step. Bells rang out of order. The town remembered what it tried to forget. Children spoke Ivan's name like it had never been missing. Old journals now contained doodles of a boy with silver eyes. And Corin, standing beneath the tower, watched as the door glowed with light once more. Ivan returned. Not older, not younger, just right. He stepped out from the starlit doorway, pocket watch ticking at his chest. I think you kept time for me, he said. Corin laughed. Only borrowed it. To balance the return, time gave 1 gift and 1 price. The gift, a day with no clocks, a day where everyone in Welvenmere laughed, remembered, and forgave. People sang songs they didn't know they knew. Bells rang in harmonies. Ivan and Corin spent it walking the town, telling stories like pages being sewn back into a book. The price. When the day ended, the tower would vanish, return to the folds between hours. But the memory would stay, as strong as any ticking second. As dusk fell, Ivan smiled. This time, I'll leave the door open. And Corin whispered, I'll always find the key. Years passed. Welvanmere changed. New clocks were born. New children sang. But on quiet days, when the wind turned east, people swore they could hear soft ticking from somewhere near Ivan, when no clock was visible. And in certain dreams, children sometimes wandered into a tower with no walls, filled with clocks that spoke of things to come and things too precious to lose. Some said it was just imagination. But one girl grown old now, hair silver and eyes sharp, always smiled when she heard the ticking wind, because Corin knew time never forgets those who remember.